Hey, what's up, Street Talk? It's Eric from the Eric from Street Photography blog. So, I wanted to give you a presentation on photography projects, how you can incorporate this in street photography, your personal photography, and beyond. So, the first question is, what is a photography project? So, I think plainly put, a photography project is working on some sort of concept which you are passionate about in photography. And there's so many different ways you can work on photography projects. You could work on photography projects in a loose sense, in the sense that you just photograph whatever interests you, and later you could categorize it into a series which you find interesting. It could be more intentional in the sense that before you start making photos, you could have a concept and then you start to photograph that. Or when it comes to photography projects, you could essentially figure it out as you go. As of right now, my opinion is I think a photography project should be fluid. It's always changing, it's always in a state of flux, and especially with the internet, and we're moving more from printed media to digital media. You don't feel like once you finish a project, it's done forever. So even at this point, I treat all the photography projects I'm working on as constantly in a state of flux. I'm adding to it, I'm subtracting from it, I'm constantly rearranging the images. And to me, this is much more interesting because it causes less anxiety for us as photographers, and also it just allows us more creative play to the spirit. And the question is, why start a photography project? So, in my opinion, photography projects are more fun, they're more challenging, they're more interesting, and they kind of give us a positive focus in our work. I know for myself in the past, I used to be stuck on the social media treadmill, which is you go out, you look for interesting photos, you take a photo of it, and you upload it to social media, Facebook, Instagram, whatever, and just hope you get a lot of likes on the photos. And now the reason why I think this is a bad idea is because social media platforms kind of come and go. So when I started photography and started to really get into it more like 2011, Flickr was the thing, right? So everyone's always on Flickr. And now essentially Flickr is more or less dead. It's all Instagram. And I think Instagram is going to be around for a long time, but I'm pretty sure in the next maybe 7-8 years it's just going to be more cluttered with advertisements, and there's probably going to be a new photography sharing platform. But anyways, when you're working on a photography project, make sure you have more control over it, which means publish to your own website, to your own platform, and it'll give you more flexibility and control and creative expression down the line. And for this presentation, I wanted to share some of my personal projects and sharing the psychology behind the process. Like, why did I decide to work on these projects? What does it mean for me? And some more practical things on processing your photos and so forth. So the first project I'm going to introduce to you is Cindy project. So if I remember for one project before I die, it's probably I'd want it to be the Cindy project. Cindy is the name of my lifelong partner and muse and fellow collaborator. And ultimately, I think the purpose of photography is for us to live a more meaningful, fulfilling, empowered life. And one of the best ways to do this is just photograph your loved ones, because your loved ones will die, you're gonna die. And I think one of the purposes of being alive is for us to A, enjoy our life with the ones we love and care about, and B, share that love and joy with other people to empower them as well. And I know in the street photography world, it's really hard to always go out and be making photographs. I think it's probably more important to photograph your loved ones than strangers, because they're the ones who are more close and meaningful to you. And this is kind of the cool thing, what you can do in photography and street photography, is that you can create a crossover. Essentially, a lot of these photos I shot of Cindy were candid, like without permission, kind of a la street photography, where it's all about the decisive moment. And essentially, I'm creating more personally decisive moments for myself and moments I had with Cindy. And essentially what I'm trying to convey through this project is my love for Cindy and for people to document their loved ones as well. And right now, I currently have it just separated between monochrome and color. And I would actually say, if you're working on a photography project, my practical suggestion is within one project or sub-project, try to keep the aesthetics consistent, which means I generally am not a big fan of mixing black and white and color within the same project. I mean, you could still make it work. I've seen some photography projects where, every other photo is a black and white photo or so forth, but to me, it's a little bit visually distracting. I think within a certain project, there should be a consistent aesthetic language. So, for example, I recently watched 2001 Space Odyssey, and the color palette throughout the film is the same and allows the Kubrick to focus more on the storytelling. Or if you watch Seven Samurai by Akira Kurosawa, the entire project film is shot on black and white, obviously. And even if I think about my favorite photography projects, generally the photographer sticks with the same camera, the same lens, and the same color palette, or black and white palette. So one of my favorite projects, Gypsies by Joseph Kudelka, he essentially traveled and lived with gypsies for about 10 years, photographing them black and white film, high contrast, with the film SLR and a 25mm lens. And the compositions are varied, very interesting, but the consistency is that he's photographing the Roma people, he's traveling and living with them, and also the equipment is consistent. So most of these Cindy Monochrome project photos I've shot, you could see they're essentially moments where I capture different moments. So for example, this is I photographed Cindy through the bottom of a drinking cup, and it kind of distorted her, and the hand gesture on the face is so powerful to me because it shows her stress and anxiety, especially as a PhD student at Berkeley. And when you're working on a photography project, I also think that it's important to vary your distances. So not all of your photos super close-up photos, but some photos where your subject's really far away. Once again, if you study great cinema, the filmmaker will often create different types of distances in the shots, which essentially prevents the viewer from getting bored. So this is a photo of me and Cindy. Here I am in the foreground and Cindy's just walking away in the background. And to me, I love the photograph because is that much more epic in terms of just the distance between me and her. And photos shot all around the world during our travels. And also I think it's important when you're photographing projects, don't just feel like you need to photograph the fantastical, just often the everyday is meaningful. So this is Cindy on her laptop and obviously stressed out, and you can see our 4 cups of coffee or so forth. During road trips, I was filling up gas at Kettleman City at the In-N-Out Burger, my favorite. Moments where Cindy's stressed and having migraines, putting the heat pack on her forehead. Or moments where we're just having a nice cup of coffee. And also when you're working on a photography project, especially if you're photographing your loved ones, interact with them in a way that's interesting and creative. So the sun setting, and she was just kind of moving around in her hands, and I just saw a triangle of her eyes. Oh, Cindy, hold up your hand and try to photograph that. And that's what essentially created that image. And I shot this with the Ricoh GR version 2, -1 or -2 exposure compensation for the more dramatic light. And it's important when you're documenting your loved ones to also have them part of the process and also make them look beautiful in certain photos too. So this is a photo that Cindy told me she particularly liked. She thought she looked very elegant in it, and I made sure to put it in the project. And this is even another photo just at our old apartment in Berkeley. We're about to go to sleep, and it kind of looks like she's stuck in the ER, or something that looks like there's this cord coming out of her to keep her on life support or something like that. And to me, it's very meaningful because let's say we're 80 or 90 years old and Cindy's dying of some sort of disease, and it's kind of this reminder that life is short, life is fleeting. Don't let petty things get in the way between you and your partner, especially if you know that death is the common thing that you're going to share. This is another photograph. We're just eating dinner and Cindy's hands are in movement, and one thing I really like the photo is the nice curve that goes throughout the frame. And so, I shot this Ricoh GR version 2, which is a great everyday camera, shot at -2 exposure compensation, and shows under a light, and it created this dramatic movement. And what you're trying to do in a photography project is you're trying to convey an emotion, you're trying to convey a sense, you're trying to convey that kind of energy that you perceived. And in this photograph, once again, Cindy's kind of like a ghost, just kind of in movement, and I think it's the hand gestures which convey better emotion. Another photograph shot at a longer distance. And also just realize it's important that if you're working on a photography project, don't try to be this objective outsider perspective. Realize that you're also an active participant. So I'd actually encourage you to put selfies of yourself in this photograph. So this is the day we're moving out of our apartment in Berkeley. Saw Cindy at the gas station looking out, and shot this with Cindy on the right side of the frame and me on the left side of the frame. This is us in Dalat, more of a dramatic photo, shot at -1 exposure compensation. And this is also another practical tip, is if you're photographing people and you see nice lights, ask them to look up into the light, which creates nice catch lights in their eyes. And this is just a simple photo. I shot this of the elevator. So I think when you're working on photography projects or just living as a photographer, always have your camera in your wrist or your neck, because you never know when beautiful photo opportunities are waiting for you. Leading lines of Cindy before we go out. We saw this photo already. Leading lines of her, and sometimes just even dance with your subject. So I saw these nice leading lines in the background and this bridge in Vietnam, and I said, oh, Cindy, this is a nice scene, click, click, click. So I took about like 10, 12 photos of her, and I said, oh, and then she's like, what do you want me to do? And I said, oh, just kind of move around your head. And the nice thing too is asking your subjects to move around is you add more movement to the photo, and the photos become more dynamic and emotional. This is a photo of us at our old apartment in Hanoi. I just walked down the stairs before she did. And this is just inside of our apartment, us about to leave. Eyes obscured. When you don't show the eyes, it's more mysterious. There's more emotion and soul. This is us waking up in the morning in our hotel room. And this is Cindy dancing in front of one of our favorite coffee shops. It was called Vipresso in Hanoi. And this is actually, to me, a very important photograph too, is that this is a project that Cindy's working on currently called Mea Translated. So Mea means mom in Vietnamese, and she's essentially creating poetry based on her mom and her personal memories and what it means to be Vietnamese. And I made a photo of just Cindy's Scrivener Evernote of her poem, of her pointing, and I think these kind of photos are really important, because even me, I took this photo maybe like a year and a half ago, and looking back at it, I'm so glad that I documented this poem that Cindy made. And now we got chroma. So as of late, I've been shooting only in color, because to me, I was shooting black and white for a while, and this kind of got to the point where it wasn't that interesting to me. So also realize when you're working on a photography project, you don't always have to end it abruptly. You could just kind of change it or morph it or evolve it into something else. So I started essentially documenting photos of Cindy, this time in color. And I like the word chroma because it just sounds sexier. So you can see all these different photos, and kind of similar concept is I'm documenting my life with Cindy. And so this photo is kind of interesting to me too, because it's quite a surreal photo with the Chinese cupping in the back. Shot this on the Ricoh GR version 2 with the flash in P mode. And once again, you could make interesting photos of some quote quote ordinary parts of your everyday life. This is Cindy getting acupuncture for her back pain. And my friend Christoph got us some Samsung VR virtual reality headset, put it on, you took off the cover, and I'm like, oh, this is so funny with the eyes all big. So ask her to stand against the wall while we're at a restaurant using a flash. We like the way the colors come and the surreal look. This is us about to get massage, and there's a nice pink wall, and just shot this at -1 exposure compensation, the Ricoh GR version 2, and you can see just this nice pink in the background and the fact that her eyes are obscured. Then you see the selfie of me on the right side. And the nice thing is when you're working in color, I think if you want to make better color photos, actually look for colorful stuff. So Cindy had her blue romper and had some nice red lipstick. It's already a nice color palette. And we're just kind of walking in the streets of LA, and we were in front of a Goodwill. And Goodwill's logo is blue. So I said, oh, Cindy, this is a nice blue wall. It matches your outfit. Do you mind if I made some photos here? She said, yeah, sure. And I click, 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 and got the color combination there as well. And also realize that when you're photographing your subjects, you get them to pose. So we're just having some brunch in Berkeley, and there's really nice light on her. And I said, oh, can you pick up that thing and, I don't know, just cover up your one eye. So I quite like the triangle composition here too. Or just kind of us having fun with one another, just using the flash, because you don't ever know what's going to happen. So this is us in a elevator in SF, and I like this photo of her with the outline of Cindy in the foreground, the middle ground, and me in the background. This is us at Think Tank Gallery in downtown LA, kind of like the symbolism of the brain. And this is once again at our favorite coffee shop, Vipresso in Hanoi. Just this beautiful sunburst of these floral, colorful designs, and asking her to stay in the center. And because her hair is swept in front of her eyes, it becomes more mysterious. And ultimately, I don't want the Cindy project to just only be about Cindy and our love for each other, but to me, Cindy is a symbol of all loved ones or all partners all around the world. And so you could see that by obscuring her eyes, it makes it more applicable to almost anybody else in the world, because they could imagine that Cindy is also, their partner. So whether you're male or female, or regardless of your gender or your who your partner is, photograph them as faithfully as you can. Suits is probably the project I'm so far the most proud of in my street photography as well. I've been working really hard on it from 2011 till I guess even now for the last 7 years. And it's crazy how time just flies by so quickly. And that's the thing too, is that when you're working on a photography project, I would actually recommend you to not get stressed out about it. Just make sure you enjoy the process, because if you're working on a photography project and if it's causing you undue stress and anxiety, I don't think it's actually worth it. I think only photography projects worth it are things which are personal and meaningful to you, and also where the process is enjoyable. So the basic concept behind Suits is I used to work 9-to-5 tech job, and it was really frustrating to me. I felt like a prisoner. I felt trapped, and I didn't feel like I could fly away. And so I thought to myself, how could I photograph and convey this feeling or this message in photographs? And I kind of came up with this idea of a suit, because even though I never wore a suit, to me this suit is this concept of being stuck in a job you don't really like, or a job that might be secure, might make good money, but doesn't really bring you personal fulfillment. And so I spent this time photographing suits from all around the world, and almost all the photos are shot on Kodak Portra 400 on a 35mm lens on a film Leica. And you can see all these different photos, and I've edited it down to the photos which have the most feelings of stress, anxiety, frustration. Also know that you get strong emotions in photos just by getting hand gestures. And shot from all around the world, different subjects, most of these shots with a flash. And I try to keep it consistent by making sure that they're only men wearing suits, and different varieties of different shots of people in suits. And often photographing a lot of these suits was really scary, but the reason I had the confidence to make these photos is to realize that I'm trying to make a photo series which I think is very socially significant, and that's what gives me the confidence to make these images. And the last project I'm going to show you right now is my Only in America project. So I think I actually got the idea for Only in America from a Jay-Z song, and it's just kind of stuck with me. And the basic concept is I wanted to present my own version of America, a world of America where ultimately I'm very pro/optimistic about America. I was born in the States. I'm actually an Eagle Scout, believe it or not. And I'm so grateful to be an American and all the opportunities it's afforded me, the fact that it's opened up my mind. I went to school in UCLA, a public university, got all these scholarships and grants. So I'm just very grateful for all the leaders, mentors, and essentially the American culture. At the same time, it really hurts my heart to see how much injustice, how much inequality and lack of access there is in America. So essentially, I started this project to essentially figure out what America meant to me. And traveling all across America over the last few years, photographing different images of America. All these shots are Kodak Portra 400, once again, for this consistent aesthetic language. And essentially, it's kind of this antiquated America stuck in time that deals a lot with issues of like consumerism, like this photograph. And you see this motif of the American flag being repeated throughout the project. Things of abandonment. It's not just people, it's urban landscapes as well. And cultural iconography like the Pepsi logo, the Coca-Cola, even shot around the suburbs. This is just shot around the suburbs of LA, just close to Cindy's mom's house. And issues of race, issues of quote-unquote lifestyle, issues of obesity, money, inequality. And there's some sort of quiet moments in these photos, and some of these photos are candid, some are with permission, some are I'm interacting with the subjects. And once again, I'm trying to make a social statement that even though I'm very positive about America, there's so much inequality and lack of access, and I'm trying to fight for more equal access in life where, assume, let's say, you live in America or you came to America, whatever. If you're willing to put in the effort to hustle hard and to be successful in America, I think you should be given all these opportunities. Now, if you decide to be a degenerate and want to just become a leech off the system, then that's no bueno. But I've noticed, especially living in Michigan when we were living in East Lansing, there's so many people without jobs, people who want to work, but there's actually no jobs available. And this is like one of the symbolisms of this photo is, we're at a Meijer, which is kind of a big grocery store in the Midwest. And here's a sign, online employment application out of order. So it's kind of the symbol behind the shot is, even though you want to work, you don't have the opportunities. And this guy is the ultimate OG to me, the ultimate hustler spirit. I was with my buddy Todd at a Sheraton Hotel, I think, in San Diego. Saw this guy in the lobby, chatted with him for a bit, took a few photos, and I said, "Oh, what do you do? What are you up to?" He's like, "I own this hotel." I'm like, "You own this hotel?" I'm like, "BS." He's like, No, I'm not joking. Go over to the front desk and ask me." Go to the front desk. There's all these photos of him. Hilarious. But the cool thing is, I have no idea how old this guy is. Maybe, I don't know, his 80s or 90s, whatever it may be. But the fact that in order to live, I think, what I consider a more fulfilling, epic life, you could spend this time to continue to work, to continue to hustle, to continue to innovate, and to essentially just live your life, not to just retire and become boring. So these are some examples of some photography projects that I personally worked on. And I just want to share some practical tips too, is if you're working on photography projects, my recommendation is this. So for myself at least, I use Dropbox. I have Dropbox Pro, probably I think it's like $10 a month, and you get about a terabyte of online storage. I have a pictures folder, and I keep these all organized according to date for the most part. And within these projects, these years, you can see I have different versions of my photography projects. So in 2014, wow, already, I have different versions. So Americans version 8, that goes all the way up to 16. And the way I do this essentially is whenever I have a new batch or a set of images, I just copy over some new photos. Sometimes I delete some photos and add to them, and sometimes I just edit them out. So I haven't seen this in a while. So like even Americans version 8. So Command A, space bar, full screen this. So what kind of so the photos are pretty consistent here. Oh yeah, so I haven't included this photo. So it doesn't include quite all the photos I have, like this one in Detroit, this Obama cutout, this open sign, this photograph of this dude with the flowers. So you can see there's some photos there that are included and some which aren't. And then whenever I have a huge new batch of photos, sometimes I copy these over too. So Americans version 11. So Command A, space bar, look through these photos. So there's so many photos that essentially don't make the cut. These are some photos I shot in Provincetown, photos around Berkeley. And essentially you get so many photographs, and time is limited, life is limited. So why not just share what you think are the most personally meaningful images? And generally, in terms of knowing which photos to keep or not, my suggestion would be just follow your gut. I might add this photo again. This is kind of interesting. This guy with the clown and the dude in the background, or like this car salesman. So anyways, I think a lot of these photos are pretty interesting photos, and I might revisit them And you could see it's also a visual diary of all the different people you've met and interacted with. And ultimately, yeah, whenever photos you decide to keep, just follow your gut. And also, one thing I'd recommend is kind of, you don't need to feel the need to rush it either, is that I found that if you know a photo is really good or not, that this one's pretty good too. In the long term, you haven't looked at the photo in a year or two or several years, and then if you look at it again and it's still a good photo, then it's a good photo. So just to kind of go, so Command W. So you can see, once again, I have all these different projects from all over the different years. Suits goes up all the way to like version 42. So even if you see older versions of my Suits projects, even like version 32. Here I have a bunch of photos of Suits just copied over, and I don't know which ones are the best ones. And essentially, I just kind of keep going through these photos whenever I have free time and just keep working on it. And this is actually one of the good things about working on film, is that it actually slows down your creative process in order for you to not feel like the need to rush to always look at your photos and choose them all the time. And so this is the Suits project is a example of just choosing a certain subject matter. I think they call this typography or typology, where you just choose one certain concept, like I'm only going to photograph men in suits, and you essentially just stick with that concept and just keep only photographing, men in suits, for example. And there's different ways you could do it too. You could photograph it according to different projects based on location, on certain events. But I think the convention, which has kind of stuck with me all the way up to 2018, is the concept that whenever you're creating a new series, you just add new version numbers to it. So you could see even like random stuff like, I've been in Osaka for a long time because I have all the way up to version 11, whereas in Tokyo I only have up to version 8. So essentially, the big takeaway point I have for you is this: is when you're working on photography projects, make sure whatever photos you have in your projects or your portfolios, just make sure that they're projects which are personally meaningful to you. And also make sure that this is my Dark Skies Over Tokyo project. Make sure that there's photos that which you can feel like have emotion, that have soul, that has some sort of personal meaning and personal significance to you. Because if a project doesn't essentially strike your own heart and doesn't interest you, why are you doing it? And you're always generally the most important person to impress in your photography. So like, this is my street portrait series. And try to keep the same equipment too. So this is all shot Ricoh GR version 2, 28mm lens. You can see I'm shooting with a flash in macro mode, getting close, all in color, processed in a similar way. And realize that you're alive only once in life. Work on projects which are meaningful to you, and always remember to memento mori, that you're going to die one day. And knowing that you're going to die, only photograph things which are personally meaningful to you, personal mementos you want for yourself, to know that the reason why life is so beautiful is that it is fleeting, and death is the fate we all share. So why not spend our lives living a more meaningful, a more happy and empowering life? Thanks a lot for watching, guys. So remember, if you're going to work on your own photography project, choose a concept, maybe scribble on a piece of paper, keep it synced in Dropbox, and keep working on the project, and realize that you have the freedom to change it however you want, share it on social media, whatever, but ultimately create your own website like I have with ericinphotography.com. You could use WordPress, you could use different services. I would recommend using WordPress. And remember to own your own platform and share the photos which are meaningful to you.